Hello, hello. Welcome. We'll give people a chance to trickle in here. Welcome to everyone that's joining live. Also, if you're catching this as a recording, you're welcome here as well. We'll give it another maybe 30 seconds and then we'll kick off. If you are here live, please feel free to chime in with your location. Hello, I'm in San Diego, California, but hello to all. All righty, we can go ahead and kick off, and we'll probably have people trickle in as we progress. But if you're familiar with me and sort of the way that I operate, I try and keep things relatively simple, concise, short, easy to understand, easy to consume. And if you're not familiar with me, then you just got a little taste of me. So this week, so September 24th, 25th, 26th are the days we're doing these sessions live. 20 to 30 minutes, maybe, kind of depending on if there's questions or how much activity or if any, rabbit holes that I kind of jump through. But the topic for today specifically is going from invisible to influential. And the upcoming sessions will sort of tie into that, but really it's a launching pad for getting into that next level of growth, particularly for underrepresented leaders. But really, there's enough that applies for people at all levels of leadership, underrepresented or not. So again, welcome to everyone that's able to join, whether it's live, whether it's the recording. Very glad you're here. Glad that you've made the time because this is a topic that is important for all of us. Many of us have experienced that feeling of invisibility at work, and that feeling of, sharing an idea, making a comment, making a suggestion, and crickets, silence. And then someone else either repeats it or says it a different way. And suddenly it's like this great, brilliant idea. Or the feeling of you're working hard. My work is going to pay off. They're going to see how smart and dedicated I am. But that's as much as they see. And you're not quite leadership material. And maybe you just need to give it another couple of years. And maybe sometimes that's true. Maybe it's just sometimes the potential in you isn't being seen or appreciated. Because being overlooked doesn't necessarily mean that you're not capable, that you don't have the potential. Oftentimes, it just means you're operating in a system or an organization that doesn't have your growth in mind. And for that same reason, your perspective, your experience, your strengths matter so much because the more that we can get that diversity of thought into organizations, into systems, the better off we all are, the more opportunity there is all around. I know early on in my career, especially, and throughout, that feeling of invisibility was really exhausting because it comes in different ways, right? It can look like being ignored. It can look like being excluded from opportunities or underestimated. Um, and it's daunting and it's hurtful. But what would the opposite of that look like? What would the opposite of being invisible look like? Really, what it is influence. And influence is about being heard, about being seen, about being respected, about actually having a voice to shape meaningful decisions. And that's my goal, particularly for today, is to start bridging that gap of invisibility to influential. Because it is a path, it is a bridge, but if we can start making steps in the right direction, it will pay off in dividends. So let's take a look at why people often get overlooked. And if we're going to be honest with ourselves and we're going to have some candid discussion, it often helps to look at facts, right? Because emotions can run high, but one of the leading management consulting firms you may or may not be familiar with is McKinsey. And the research from them shows that the biggest drop off in leadership actually happens very early on in a career, like that first promotion to manager, that first opportunity. So if we go with that, it's almost like at an entry level, the playing field is seemingly the same for all of us or most of us. And then during that first stepping stone, that first opportunity for advancement, then maybe it's not as level as we maybe thought it was. And McKinsey actually came up with a name for it. It's like the broken rung. So it's significant enough that it's actually been identified as a meaningful step, a meaningful drop off. And so what's the cause, right? Is it because certain groups of people maybe aren't as intelligent? They don't have the same abilities. They don't have the same desires or ambitions. Oh, probably not. Usually not. Usually it's more that there isn't the same level of support. And I am not from the school of thought that comes necessarily from a place of malice, like from a bad place. We're also human, right? And it's natural for us to gravitate to people that look like us, that sound like us, that maybe grew up in the same area, had similar experiences. Like oftentimes that's just the easiest way to relate to someone, and often we're inclined to help support those people. That's why it takes awareness and intention to go beyond that, right? To actually say, well, okay, this is a different perspective. Instead of shutting it down, why don't I actually listen to it? And then I can form an opinion, right? So it's a little bit of education, awareness, intention. And I choose to believe that it doesn't always necessarily come from a negative place, right? But when we're on the receiving end, when we have those, call them what they are, unconscious bias of that person's too quiet or that person's too loud or whatever the case may be, it's bringing those things to light and being able to actually have conversations about those things. What else can it look like? It can look like being asked to be the note taker because you're so organized. You could maybe be the only person, the only female in the room, or the only person of color in the room, and somehow you're just like this marvelous note taker, right? I'm speaking very general terms, right? Giving some examples of what that can look like, where we're sort of painted in a box of, okay, these are your capabilities. This is where you kind of fit in the big scheme of things. And what we really want to do is expand minds and horizons and ambitions. And yeah, we as people are very different. We come in all shapes, sizes, colors, genders, whatnot. But different doesn't necessarily mean bad. And oftentimes we think that because we're different, because whatever, we may have an accent or we were raised in a different country or we are a little bit more introverted and maybe quiet than other people, that those things are bad. That's not what a leader looks like or sounds like. But I would challenge you, if that's the way that you think, to consider how you can switch that on its head, right? Like, how is it actually to your benefit? How does it actually serve you to be different? Because let's say you do have a thick accent, right? That probably also means that you work twice as hard in your mind to process information, to translate it. Maybe you're thinking in a native tongue and you have to translate it. So your brain is working extra hard. Your brain can do more things that maybe someone that just has one native tongue, it just comes easy. They're sort of on autopilot, right? Not that one is right and one is wrong, but there's an advantage to being able to have a mind that can do that translation and that processing and still be able to deliver the quality of work that someone else that maybe doesn't have that um, need may have. Or if you come from a disadvantaged, neighborhood or upbringing, you probably had to do maybe a lot more work around the house or um, helping family, as an interpreter when, they were at the doctor, when they were at the grocery store. Right? I'm just kind of throwing out examples. And those things that became second nature to us oftentimes make us more resilient, right? We don't have a choice. We just have to do it. We have to do it, so we do it. And that winds up becoming resilience. And resilience is a strength, right? Think about any promotion that you're going for, or if you want to start a business or whatever it is there's going to be some elements of failure and difficulty and adversity. And if we don't have that resilience, we're just going to crumble, right? Things are not always going to go in our favor. So those are just a couple of things, but I would challenge you to think, right? Where are the things that you are looking as a disadvantage, and how are those things actually your superpowers, your resilience, your unique perspective, your empathy, all those things that come from our own lived experience, are things that actually can help either you as an individual or even a company to be more effective or innovative. So take some time here, take like 15 to 30 seconds, and I want you to think about your upbringing, think about your schooling, your first job, whatever it is, your story, unique to you, and write down or even think or even say out loud. Feel free to comment if you so choose, but one strength that you bring to the table because of your lived experience. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, I promise you, it does not have to be fancy. You don't have to use a dictionary to figure out the words. It can be your empathy, it can be your generosity, it can be your resilience. So I'm going to give you 15 to 30 seconds here where you have some time to think through your experience and come up with your word or words. And go ahead and comment or DM me or share with a friend what you came up with. I'd be really curious to see what it is. I'll share mine. I think I come up with two, which is empathy and resilience. Empathy to other people's situations and difficulties, and different perspectives or experience, and then resilience of kind of that we have no choice but to be the way that we need to be. Alrighty, so moving from invisible to influential, I want to break it down into 3 layers. Uh, you, your relationships, and the systems around you. Because you can't control everything, but you can take action at all of these levels. So if we start with just you own your story, you know what you bring, and you know why it matters. Only you know not only your experiences, but what you're able to accomplish, whether that's being very detail oriented, whether that's being very expressive, very creative, very being able to see the big picture. You know what those things are. So don't wait for someone else to come up and show those wins. You make that work visible, right? And it doesn't have to be even a humble brag. It doesn't have to be boastful. It doesn't have to feel uncomfortable, but being able to articulate what you do, right? If you participated in a big project, if you set the foundation for something, if you came up with an innovative idea or suggestion, being able to communicate that in a way that lands starts getting you that visibility. So not only that, speaking with clarity, whether it's reclaiming an idea that you came up with or framing your perspective with confidence. So that's on the piece that is you and yourself, right? The next one in those 3 levels are your relationships, because no one at any level, whether they're an executive, whether they're um, an individual contributor, a manager, whatever it is, nobody's doing this alone. We all need some level of relationships or influence that can help. And so, one of the biggest things that we can get are mentors, sponsors, allies, even our peers, right? But oftentimes I see there's a little bit of confusion on the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And a mentor, in my opinion, is a lot easier to come by, right? Because a mentor can cover one area of specialty, or it can be multiple things, right? It can be something as simple as um, someone that has experience with a certain technology or a certain platform or a certain industry, right? They can guide you and they can give you suggestions from that limited lens. That's why I say too, a mentor can be someone older than you, a mentor can be someone younger than you, right? If maybe I need help with some new platform that I'm not familiar with, I could have a mentor that's much younger than me that is just savvy in that particular technology, and I can go to them and know that I can get their guidance and their suggestions from their level of expertise on that particular subject. Where a sponsor is much different. A sponsor is someone that has skin in the game. It's someone that's putting their name, their reputation on the line for you, that's advocating for you. Those people that are saying your name in the rooms that you are not in. That's what a sponsor does, right? So a sponsor might be not only your direct supervisor or manager, it could be someone up 1 or 2 levels from them. Being able to forge those relationships with someone that does have the voice, that does have the influence, can open up doors for you that you didn't think maybe necessarily were even possible. And they can accelerate that. But it comes with some work and some intention, right? Because people aren't just going to vouch for you and put their name on the line just because you ask them to, right? They have to see in you the potential, the desire, and you have to give them a reason to want to put their name on the line for you, right? So think about that, right? Who can you engage as a mentor or a sponsor or even an ally, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that will always advocate for you, but how can you collaborate with others and build a network of various relationships that can amplify you and your goals? And same thing with peers, right? So you can control from your aspect, your relationships, and then also need to learn how to behave and um, leverage the systems that are in place, right? So if you're, say, new to an organization or to a team or have a new manager, being able to ask questions like, what would success in my role look like? Or, even for your manager, what does success for you look like? And getting really granular and getting clarity on how are promotions decided? How do performance evaluations work? Being able to get that clarity as black and white as is possible, right? It doesn't always exist, and maybe that's part of your job, right? Is to figure out where is it ambiguous, where is it not clear, and where is it pretty black and white. Because if it's black and white, awesome, you can kind of go through and tackle some things. But then if you see that it, or determine that it is a little bit more unclear or ambiguous, then you can maybe have those pointed conversations with your own boss to say, okay, I know we don't have any formal policies in place, but you evaluating me, what specifically are you looking for? And then be able to tackle those things, right? Um, and part of it will be a continuous sort of active intention about your own mindset, your own doubts, self doubt, imposter syndrome, burnout, choosing which battles are worth fighting and which ones are maybe not worth fighting, or figuring out if the organization that you're a part of you want to continue to be a part of, or may just always be an uphill battle, right? So a lot of the suggestions and the tips that I'm giving you may be useful within some organizations, and it may not, right? Because you are fighting an uphill battle, and the powers that be might not really ultimately allow for you to continue to grow. That's an assessment that each one of us makes as an individual. So here's going to be my challenge for you, not only this week, but for the upcoming weeks, is do some self-reflection, right? On 1 to 3 of your strengths, right? And it could be something that we covered earlier, right? You identifying your 1 to 2 strengths that we did earlier today. It could be those same things, but how can you leverage that strength? If it's empathy, how can that empathy show up as a strength? How can you leverage that? How can you build relationships off of that? Um, and it's a perfect segue, right? Then you start building those relationships. Start identifying 1 to 2 people that can either be a mentor or a sponsor or an ally, and be very intentional about strengthening those relationships, right? And don't be weird about it. don't go to someone and be like, will you be my mentor? Will you be my sponsor? Can you put your name on the line for me? No, it's just act like a human, engage in human-like conversation, find some common ground, invite someone up for a coffee or lunch or whatever is appropriate in your, in your circumstances, in your circle. Start doing that. Start building relationships, particularly as a human, right? With no ask. Don't go with your hand out. Just identify what may be some meaningful relationships and start building those. And take it one step at a time. Start keeping an eye open for opportunities and when you can raise your hand and when you can insert yourself, right? So that's going to be it, is claim your strengths, identify and start establishing some relationships, and then find ways to be visible or to find projects that will give you an opportunity to shine. So as a reminder, each one of us inherently has strengths. Even if we sometimes, our minds try to convince us that they're weaknesses, there's always that other side of the coin and how we can use those things as a superpower to our advantage. So you, no matter who you are, have the opportunity to jump from being invisible to influential. It doesn't come at the snap of a finger. It takes intention, it takes work, it takes acting strategically, but it does not take changing who you are as an individual. It's about owning who you are as an individual, strengths and weaknesses alike. So we will continue with our sessions tomorrow and Friday. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad that you were able to make it. I can't wait to hear updates on how you have started to gain that influence, gain that confidence. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.